back again with another video about dating. Try to call it dating on the spectrum, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, if you've seen my videos, you know I am a late diagnosed autistic man, level 1. And this channel is primarily about dating, which is something that I've figured out, and I figured it out before I got my diagnosis. I have a system for it. If you want to check it out, it's in the description. It's free. You can get a PDF and a video of me describing the specific steps that I go through in order to, how I went from being unkissed at 26 to living the dating life of my dreams. Check it out if you want to. But today's video is about I guess you can call it physical escalation. So you're on a date, and how do you solve the challenge of initiating touch? And also, how do you go from saying hello and maybe you're giving a hug, and how do you go then from moving that towards holding hands, kissing, and so forth, and doing that in a smooth way? So this was the biggest problem for me when I started learning how to date or going out and meeting women, is that I couldn't figure out how to initiate touch because it felt so strange for me to reach. Should I just reach out and touch her now? And I felt like that distance from, starting the movement of my arm until I touched her shoulder or whatever, I felt it was like, that was so, that took forever. And the distance felt like it was like, really long distance. But for me, it was so difficult to make it smooth, and not make it feel like a forced thing. So I just want to give a few tips on how I did it and how I kind of structured that. In my PDF, I talk about something that I call the Physicality Ladder. And it has like 4 steps. I guess you could go even more granular and, make even more steps, but I put it into 4 steps for a 4-step process. And essentially, when you're on a date, the first step, the 0 step, is the one you want to avoid, which is the handshake, right? No. Don't do the handshake on a date. A very good way to initiate a date when you meet the person is to go for the hug. And you don't have to go for the bear hug thing, but you go for the one-armed hug like this. The reason it works is that it's a very low pressure. It's not a too intimate thing, but at the same time, it puts you in the category of, this is someone I'm close with, and not this is not a business meeting or meeting a person that might be my friend for the first time. This is an actual potential romantic connection. So I would start with a hug, and even then, looking her in the eye and saying, it was really nice to meet you, or something like that. Okay. Now, when you start your date like this, you've established that this is a romantic setting. Now, this is the first step of the ladder, the one-armed hug. And this also includes things like, taking her hand, touching her shoulder. Because if you think about the body, it has different zones. Like holding someone's hand, it's fairly intimate, but it's not intimate to the point where you're, making someone feel very uncomfortable. So the same thing is if you touch someone's shoulder here, it's not a super intimate thing. Now, one thing I will tell you though, is if you notice at any point that the person is feeling uncomfortable, then just, back off. You can wait a little bit, you can try again, but if you notice that someone's feeling uncomfortable, then it's just not worth, it's not going to go anywhere, and you don't want to make other people uncomfortable, okay? But going back again to that step 1. So when you're on a date, you could sit across from each other, or you could sit next to each other. Usually it's better to sit next to each other. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The number 1 reason is, when you're sitting across from someone, you have to do a lot of eye contact. If you find it uncomfortable to do a lot of eye contact, then you will start feeling comfortable, and that will make the whole date feel a little bit maybe uncomfortable for the both of you. And the other part of it is if you're sitting across from someone, it's a little bit more difficult to initiate touch. So if you are sitting across from someone and you have your eye contact is good, as you can check in my PDF and know how to do it, then after a while, what I usually do is that I just put my hands forward and see if she, meets my hand. And then we can hold hands over the table. So that's how I would initiate touch in a kind of zone 1, level 1 way on a date, if you're sitting across from each other. Now, if she's sitting next to you, it's much easier because now you can very easily initiate touch on her shoulder and even like hold her hand, like just putting your hand out by your on your own leg, for example, and you're holding hands like that. And you don't have to do it all the time, okay? But kind of putting in these elements of touch throughout the date is a good idea, okay? So that's the level 1 touch. You're holding her hand a little bit, you're touching her shoulder a little bit. Now, as you start going throughout the date, it makes sense, or a series of dates, like this could be date number 2, this could be date number 3, right? But it makes sense to move the physicality even further, right? So at some point, you would like to have your arm around her. You would like to walk when she's holding your hand and you're close, or you have your arm around her when you're walking down the street. What I will say about this is that not all people are comfortable doing this in a restaurant where, there could be a lot of other people looking at you, right? So if you have your arm around someone, they might not be comfortable in a restaurant setting. So for me, usually that level, which will go on to level 2 of the Physicality Ladder, would be probably done outside, right? So if we're going for a walk, for example, after we've had if we met for a glass of wine or something, then that's the point where I would try to, that's the point where I would initiate touch more like that, to, hold her a little bit closer, put my arm around her, maybe stop looking at the view and I hold her close. That's the point where I look at her and maybe go for the kiss, right? So again, what I will say about this is that, or I haven't said it again, so what I will say about this is you need to take some chances, right? You need to take some risk when you're on a date. And I'm not talking about taking risk in that you're forcing yourself on someone, but if you try to put your arm around someone and you notice they don't like it, okay, that's fine, right? Then that's a quote unquote rejection, whatever, you can deal with it. And then obviously you back off, right? But if you don't try it, you'll never get anywhere. So that's why risk reward is so crucial in dating, is that you have to take these small little risks in order to get to where you want to go on a date. And the great thing is when you do it in the smooth fashion, and when you think about zones, it's like the first zone, the one-armed hug, maybe holding hands a little bit, touching her shoulder. And then zone 2, okay, you're a little bit closer to each other. You're going for the kiss. And one thing about the kiss, okay, maybe it will be awkward. Doesn't really matter. Okay? You try it. And try it when you're somewhat isolated, right? So don't try it in front of a million different people. But if you're walking and you're looking at a view, or there's not so many people around you, and you stop for a little bit, then, you can take her hands, try to pull her in a little bit, not like this, but like gradually you hold her hands and you just move your hands a little bit closer to you, to yourself. And if she comes along, okay, okay, she's interested. And then you can try to go for the kiss, right? Just move your face a little bit closer to her face. And if she does the same, she's interested in kissing you, okay? Now, by doing these like I call them micro risks because it's not really big risk, but you have to take a little bit of a like ego risk, I guess, whenever you move to these steps. You can do it in a smooth way, right? If you were to go to level 4, which I guess you can imagine what level 4 is, like you don't start there, right? You have to build it. So that's why we do this in levels. Now, you've kissed, you walked close. The next 2 levels are more intimate levels, right? So most of the time, I would say 9 out of 10 times with 9 out of 10 people, maybe a higher number than that. This would only happen when you're in isolation by yourself, just the 2 of you, right? Meaning at home. So if you're on a date and you've had that experience, you're holding her arms a bit close, you've kissed, you know that she is very likely romantically interested in you. And if you at that point suggest the next date to be at your place or at her place, or if you go back to your place on that same night, you know that it makes sense to kind of move it towards the next step. And this is where I don't want to really talk about this on YouTube because it's just, for the algorithm and I don't know who's watching this, if you're old enough or whatever. But at this point, you can get the idea that you would move the interaction to even more of an intimate level. And there will be 2 more levels. So level 3, right, will be more of an intimate level in, let's say, for example, in the living room while watching a movie. And then level 4 will obviously be when you go to the bedroom, right? So I hope this made sense. And I hope you get some value from it. I'm very curious about your thoughts, your experiences, and what you think. So please do comment if you want to, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.